Welcome everybody to another episode of the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, and I have the pleasure now. For those of you who have been listening to the podcast, you heard my episode with Tanya and how I was able to reconnect with somebody that I met back at Lead Pages. And then prior to that, we had Ryan on the podcast. We had Bob. We've had a bunch of Lead Pages alumni, and today's episode is no different. It's something to be said when you meet good people, when you come across good people, make sure that you stay connected. And that's not only the topic of today's podcast and how to find and take care of people, but a good person that I recently reconnected and found is Ashley Lundquist. Now, Ashley is a data-driven, human-centric leader, has 15 years of experience building and scaling executive teams, talent strategies, and people operation departments in the VC and private equity space. She's experienced growth from seed to exit, sat on multiple executive leadership teams, and led global scaling initiatives to support valuations. Watch this. In the billions. That's a B, everybody. I didn't say million. I said that's the B. So Ashley founded Thrive Talent to pursue her passion for helping growth-oriented businesses build and retain healthy, happy teams that can scale both revenue and culture. Do you all see? Do you see why I have Ashley on the podcast today and why I'm so excited? So Ashley, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for that intro. I really kind of want to hire you to do a voiceover for my website. When you say it like that, I'm like, yeah.
Right? You know that happens to me sometimes. If somebody like puts something like a little extra into my bio, I'm kind of like looking around like, wait a minute. It sounded like me in the beginning, but hold on, did I achieve all of that? Okay.
Talking about. No, I'm
Yes.
so happy to be here with you. We go way back, and I really value what you said about staying connected to good people for many reasons, and you are one of the absolute best people. So thanks for having me here to chat.
Yes, Ashley. So I wanna start off by giving some insight, everyone, on how I got to experience Ashley. Now, I was working at Lead Pages, so you know, it's just the day to day, and it's like, oh yeah, she's really nice. She really knows what she's doing. Now that was from afar, but it came contextual for me when it was time for me to leave. And we did it the right way, put in my 2 weeks and everything. And I have to say that there are times where that 2 week time frame can really go left. I mean, you could feel isolated, cold. You can may feel like people have been vindictive. I know at previous jobs in the corporate world, it's kind of like, oh, you're leaving, you're dead to me. Like there's all types of strange things that happen. And Ashley, you handled it in such a way that I had never experienced. In fact, I don't know if I told you this, Ashley, I just come off the tail end of a person in HR treating me just like the total opposite. I felt abused, honestly. That's what it felt like leaving. So I was pre-conditioned that was how it was going to be. So I was like bracing for it, and it never came. It never came. And there's a few times you reached out, like just a pure reach out, like, hey, look, Lead Pages had off, person to person. How are you? And that was so different. That was just, it took me a while to receive it as genuine as you were giving it. But I think that's the moment where you went from, hey, I work with her, to wait a minute, she's somebody on another level. Let me stay connected. Because if she made me feel like this, That means wherever she goes, wherever she stays, whatever she does, she has the ability to provide that feeling for people. And today, we really are actually struggling with connecting. You know, I love technology, but it's something that we're all figuring out as a nation, as a world, how to still stay connected in this technology era. So I want to give you the floor here. And today's topic, if I haven't said, I know I talked about people on the top at the top of this, but in Ashley's bio, we talked about how she's scaled, how she's helped these companies scale, all by focusing on people, all by focusing on people. So, Ashley, tell me this: when was it in your career, whether it was prior to you being a professional or during a particular time of you being a professional, did you really start to understand that people are the key and that's where you wanted to focus?
Ooh, that's a good question. So it started off sideways for me. So actually, well, I can take it even farther back. Growing up, my dad had issues with employment. He'd been laid off, things of that nature. So I got really
Yeah.
excited about job postings and recruiting and finding jobs. And that kind of sparked my interest of seeing on the very personal side something in my family, like how is the human impacted by this versus this exciting like hunt of finding a job. So that was very early on, but childhood level. In
Hmm.
college, I started off in the nursing program, and that wasn't doing it for me. And then I went into an urban education program, and that wasn't quite fulfilling it. And I realized that core denominator there was the human element. It was people, and it's when I merged
Mm,
that with the business mindset that I really got excited and started to have the wheels start to turn and see what was going on there. Um, but I, like most humans, entered the workforce, and you know, it's I don't know how to articulate it exactly, so I'll kind of give you word vomit, but
hmm.
it's like you're stepping into this arena where you see how the game's played, you see how to win, and you've kind of got to fall in line. That's the perception, at least from my experience as somebody early on in their career. And you're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, this doesn't feel right," but like that's how you get there. Okay, let's hustle. Um, and I actually had somebody influence me relatively mid career, I would say, Tracy Simmons from Lead Pages, who really helped me completely open my heart in the workplace.
Mm,
And that sounds like a dirty word, right? A lot of us are taught
hmm.
that, oh, don't
Hmm.
mix that. And I think that is because the perception of danger of like, oh my gosh, if you do have feelings involved, if you do involve humanity, if you do recognize that these are humans, then you have to treat them different. You can't follow these like this business code of ethics that's like, don't cry at work, put your game face on, don't talk
Yeah.
about your personal life.
Yeah.
Which is sad because I think a lot of us grew up in that space. And I do think that there's a fine line still, right? But at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all bringing our stuff to work, whether we want to admit it or not.
Right.
Even if you're compartmentalizing, there are pieces of you, there are parts of you that are going to show up. And when you're in high stress environments, things are going to fly around crazy. So, how do you create
Yes.
an environment where we can support that and we can make it a safe place and we can recognize the humanity that truly is business? So, it's
Yes.
it makes me giggle when you talk about having, a good experience with an HR person when it's like, oh man, like that's the irony that sticks out to you is so sad.
Yes. Yes. And I have to say this. It's important what you mentioned with people being able to bring their whole self, to work and be human. There's three things I want to say. One is the statement of this is it's not personal, it's business is one of the most abused, overused, and misused statements because people use it so lazily to just dismiss the human element in business when you're doing transaction with humans. That's one. And then two is where Ashley did we pick up this thing that emotions are the enemy of success and progress in the workplace? Like it.
Wow.
I've led teams. It's crazy because professionally, I've led more women teams than mixed or men's teams, and that has never been an issue. Anytime a female has cried to me, I've never felt weird. I've never felt like, oh, suck it up. I've always embraced it. And I know that's not the norm, but I want to highlight, we mentioned Tracy. So everybody, Tracy, the co-founder of Lead Pages, she headed the operations and people side of Lead Pages, amazing leader. And I want to give a shout out because as you were talking, I remember something. There was a time at the time when I was at Lead Pages, Philando Castile had been murdered, and it was polarizing. I had friends while it was taking place, like I was watching it live. I was like, what's on this shirt? I thought it was ketchup, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. So that is traumatic, and I didn't even realize it. So it happens, and it doesn't settle well, and you try to go to sleep, and you wake up, and you try to be present the next day. Now, it was a remote day, Ashley, so it was a little easier to be present because I didn't have to be in front of people, this and that.
Sure.
And look at what happened. Look at what happened. Tracy called me up individually and said, Chris, how are you feeling today? Again, Ashley, I didn't know how to respond. I'm not used to people like checking in on me
Sure.
personally, especially like in leadership like that. Not that Tracy walked around like I am the co-founder. She was very personable. You would never know who she was. Right? Just
Right.
walking through Lead Pages. And she called me up and I didn't know what she was talking about. I said, dang, did I tell him I was sick? Or my mind's trying to figure out like what's going on. And she was like, about the news yesterday and this. And I was like, whoa, she's sympathetic to the plight that I may be going through, that I didn't even give myself permission to feel. And
Yeah.
Tracy called me and told me if I need to take the day off, whatever time you need. That impacted me so much. I was like, whoa, where does this happen? I was not expecting it. So I had to say that for Tracy and give her a shout out. She probably never knew how much it impacted me, but absolutely, absolutely. So let me keep on to the people train.
Yeah.
How is it possible? Now, I am the marketing automation professor, the expert, and all of that good stuff. I've seen what automated marketing can do for a company. I've seen it scale. I know the mechanics. Oftentimes, when we're online in this space, we hear funnel this and hack that and advertise this. You're putting into perspective, hey, the properly managed team will help you scale too. So help the SaaS startup founder, help the growing team entrepreneur turning into the small business owner with payroll that they didn't anticipate in the beginning. How does properly managing or building, I should say, building the team and managing, how does that scale the company?
Sure, sure. That's a great question. And I think, at the center of it all, you can have the most amazing product in the world. And for the most part, I'm sure there's a few caveats, without
Yeah.
people, you're not going to be able to scale that. And so, really focusing in that, I have to get the right people in place and I need to treat them with like they're an asset. They're a gem. They're not just these parts of a machine that I can, set it and forget it. You have to
Hmm.
continue to really nurture them like you nurture anything. And I think that's something that's interesting to me. I have a lot of interest in, um, just the energetics, not gender specific, that we bring into the workplace. And something that I think has been missing is this feminine energy. So again, not gender specific, but we've got a lot of hard building, structural repeatability, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Yes, it's amazing. And you need to bring that feminine flow in, which is nurturing, which is
Yes.
humanity, which is
Yes.
creation. And I think what you'll find is that when you can prioritize taking care of your humans, you unlock a level of creativity. You unlock a an automation, to say, of skills that where things just come out and they replicate and they duplicate, and your people aren't burning out. You get so much more out of it, and you're seeing new
Yes.
ideas, new innovation that you never thought was possible because you have created a safe place for your team. And I think that's really what it comes down to: is what does a safe place for your team look like? How do you build that with your
Mm.
culture? in a way that resonates with you. And I know, at a core fundamental level, a safe place is making sure everybody feels included and belongs. The way Tracy reached out to you because she saw you, she saw what was going on in that moment and said, hey, maybe there's something I should call out to let Chris know I see him here, that he belongs here, and
Yeah.
his feelings are included in my day today. Um,
Hmm.
so there's that. I think at a very practical level, educating yourself as a leader. What is figuring out what does being a leader mean to you, and what are
Mm.
your values as a leader? So there's a book that I recommend personally, Radical Candor. I think is fantastic because it
Yeah.
brings together the importance of, you know, having a safe environment doesn't mean it's rainbows and butterflies all the time. You think
Yes.
about a family dynamic. Let's say for those of you that have kids or siblings or people that feel like family, when you're going through tough stuff, you don't just brush it off and play, nice all the time. You're going to tell them, hey, this hurt my feelings, or this needs to be corrected, or this could be done better. But how do you do that in a way? How do you develop that safety again with your team members, that you're building them up enough that they trust you, that they feel seen, that they're willing to take that feedback because they know it's coming from a place that's going to improve the business and improve them? Because contrary to what so many believe, business is personal. Go to a company, ask any of those people, is their job personal to them? And hell yeah, it's super personal. Like it impacts my well-being, my self-worth, how I take care of my family. Like it's the closest thing to
Yes.
personal we have.
Absolutely. And I just think that, and I have to give my wife a shout out too, because she is a very passionate person about healing and reconciliation, and that's just her gifting. She exists that people would live in harmony,
Yeah.
with one another. And to do so, it requires, therapy, counseling, things of that nature. And what I found with me personally as a leader is the more help that I got for myself, the
Yeah.
more personal growth, emotional growth that I myself received, I was able to give in a greater capacity.
Yes.
I was
100%.
able to see people as people. And
Yeah.
and one of the things that I always say is concern before correction,
Yeah.
right? Like something may be going on. Somebody sent the wrong email, or maybe something is, their quality of output is slipping. It's so easy, Ashley, to go and say, hey, you did this wrong, this is and that. But time has showed me, hey, go check in with them first. Express some
Sure.
concern. They may be dealing with something heavy and they don't want to just bring it to you, but if you ask, perhaps they'll share it. Or if you're in a leadership position and you haven't garnered that trust, send somebody else to go and say, hey, can you go check on so and so, before you go into the, hey, you did this wrong, you did this. But it comes from a higher level of emotional IQ, you
Yep.
know?
100%. And I
Yeah.
think um my perspective is, again, going back to being a good leader, in order to be a good leader, you have to truly see your people. In order to truly see your people, your stuff can't be getting in the way. Otherwise, you're going to see
Mm.
your trigger. What story is this telling me? How am I getting worked up? You have to be that calm to go in and help your team. And um, I don't think it's interesting because when we talk about the softer side of business, that
Hmm.
humanity, the safe place, the working on yourself as an individual so you can be a better leader, that's not mutually exclusive with results. I'm not
Yes.
saying metrics don't matter if your people are happy. Like that's not how it is. It's just a piece of the puzzle that we're missing because
Yeah.
then when you have clearly defined goals, when you have the right people in place, when you have a good communication foundation within your organization, and you have people that are healthy, happy, feel supported, what you're able to accomplish is going to be tenfold. And it
Yeah.
really, in my opinion, it doesn't take that much extra work to create that safe place. It's intention. That's all it is. It's intention and it's thought. And outside of that, when people feel that safety, they are the ones who are going to grow that. They're going to build the teams around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love you highlighting that it's not mutually exclusive. I can
Yeah.
have I can focus on people, still be straightforward and direct and honest, still make money, still be revenue focused and hit goals. I can do all of those things, at
Right.
once. When it comes to people and team building, and I guess I can just say team build. When it comes to team building, one of the
Right.
things that I'm seeing a lot of actually entrepreneurs, small businesses, and small enterprises all together struggling with is finding good talent, right?
Mhm.
Now, I think there is a HR staffing component to this, like how to prospect and all of that. But I really want to talk from as a leader. And have you seen it, Ashley, or do you recommend the approach of identifying the skills that you currently have in your business? Like, I know some people will have their employees take disc assessments and all types
Sure.
of assessments to identify, okay, where are our strengths and weaknesses, and then go out in the marketplace and look for the skills and the personality type that complement that. Or what is your approach that you've seen be most effective when it comes to identifying people to build a healthy team or a strong team?
Sure, sure. That's a great question. And I don't know that anybody's got the perfect answer for this
Mm-hmm.
yet, but I'll share what I've seen and what I feel pretty strongly is a good first step. So I think first and foremost, this idea of top talent, good talent, it's thrown around a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that it's subjective. What does good mean? Um, and so I think that's actually step one is defining what does good talent mean to my organization? What does good talent mean for this team in particular? Because, a silly analogy is, you can go to, it's like going to the grocery store and saying, where's the food? And you're like, oh, it's everywhere. But if you're
Food
cooking a
everywhere.
vegetarian meal and you get stuck in the meat aisle, yeah, it's not going to be good food for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's all real. Um, and so I think it's really important to be able to break down. And this is going to look different depending on the size of your company, the size of your team, the focus of your team. But what are the behavioral qualities that you need in your organization? So that's going to impact how decisions are made, how humans are treated, how you persevere through tough times. And so a lot of times that's tied into core values as an organization. But making sure we're pulling those out, and then simultaneously, what are the hard skills? What are the technical skills that we really need from an expertise perspective? And you can do that in different ways. You can do a SWOT analysis. There's different personality survey. There's so many different assessment tools you can
Mm-hmm.
use, and really zoning in on, hey, for our phase where we're at a company, what do we need to identify? And I actually think it just, especially in the earlier stage environment, going into the basics of let's build a scorecard. Let's put
Mm.
these elements in. Let's look at my team. Let's figure out what our strengths are, what our gaps are, and what are the must-haves. Because it's really easy to get distracted by shiny objects. I had
Yeah.
a man, Doug Sellers. He was, gosh, this was about a decade ago now at Good. He was the CTO there. And I'm probably like, I'll get the spirit of this story right, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But he essentially was doing a hiring teaching to the organization. And he talked about how they were hiring for their technical team, and this man, I believe it was, that had created the logo for Windows, had applied, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible! We have to get him on board." And they were pulling strings, and super expensive getting it set up. And at the final hour, they were like, "Wait, what does this have to do with our team and our company and what we actually?"
Mm.
This is so cool that he's done this, but we're applying it to something that's not relevant, and that ultimately, wouldn't have worked in the end. So yeah, it goes back to basics, and again, taking that accountability as a leader for identifying what's needed on my team.
Yeah. You know, I often when I interview people, I try to put myself in the listener seat or in like the seat of the person that we could potentially be talking about. And as a founder, I wrote this down. I really loved your analogy of what is good, right?
Mhm.
It's like going into the grocery store and saying, "Where's the food?" It's like, well, there's food everywhere. What type are you looking for? And getting clear with exactly what you need is your responsibility as the founder. And too often that's projected onto the talent that you hired when
Yeah,
you didn't take the time to first identify, okay, this is what I need. These are the qualities, these are the tasks that, like, get
yeah,
clear on that. Now, to be fair, you don't always know. And that's the
yeah.
dynamic nature of this. Maybe hiring the right person too early showed you you weren't ready. Maybe
Sure,
hiring the wrong person late, is showed you like, oh, I really do need this type of expertise. And you have that balance. And I feel like everybody that comes into your company teaches you something about your company. It's it's
absolutely.
it's not always them. It's, oh man, she just fell asleep all the time. Well, you may want to look in the mirror and see
Sure,
if there's alignment, right? Like somewhere along the line in the interview process or whatnot. But the when I think about this and say, you know what, get clear, get clear on who you're looking for. What are some ways? I'm an introspective person, Ashley. So I can sit down in a dark room or driving with no music and I can think and,
yeah,
and I can process. Some people, they're not, a lot of founders are kind of more lofty in their thoughts and possibilities and next thing.
sure.
What are some tips you can give somebody to help them slow down and really define what it is that they are looking for? So when they go into the marketplace and look for a team member or focusing on their team, understanding the qualities that they need that they may or may not have, how does an individual go through that exercise themselves?
Sure, sure. So there's a couple things I'd recommend.
Hmm.
One, I think, look at what your competitors are doing, look at what other people in your space have done, hit, like poke your network, ask
Mm,
questions. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel per se if you can tap your network and see, oh,
yeah,
this
that's good.
worked really well at so and so. Doesn't mean you have to copy it exactly, but if you can figure out, ooh, these are key things that I can pull that really make sense.
Yeah.
That's huge. And then, again, depending on the role, right? Because if we're talking about we're building the leadership team from a founding perspective from scratch,
Yeah.
there's a different approach versus other roles in the organization. But I would say if we're going to talk about broad early hires, um, what are your biggest pain points right now? What are the
Yeah.
things that you need to get accomplished that either stress you out the most, are sucking most of your time, or you have no idea where to start? And like,
Mm,
let's pull that bucket out first, and break it down that way. Or I don't know, let's say it's a hire that you're not familiar with and you think you need it. That's another one where I'd say go look on LinkedIn, look at different job descriptions, figure it
yeah.
out and what they're saying and what to do, and how can you kind of replicate that as a starting point. Now if you've already got a team built, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how does this role fit into the team, that's where, a version of, and this is probably like the most old school you'll hear me talk, but like just your like OG SWOT analysis can be really helpful in
Yeah.
figuring out, okay, what are our strengths? What are we good at here? What are the gaps we need to fill? What are the opportunities if we were able to bring in something, new and fresh? What would that look like?
Hmm.
And build a scorecard around that. And then your scorecard isn't meant to be this, prison that holds you, but you can build it. If you're starting to interview candidates and you're getting scores where you're like, oh, this is high, but it's still not hitting, that's going to help you go down the thought process of, well, what do I need to add? What do I need to change? What's missing from this recipe?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. And let's say you've done your due diligence, you've gone through that, and you make a hire. And let's talk about more of the entry level, to individual contributor, not necessarily leadership yet.
Sure.
So you've made the hire, you've got the job description and everything. The person shows up, first few months, great. Oh man, this has never been better. And then you start getting more clarity. Maybe your SWOT analysis wasn't as thorough as you thought it was. And that person, although good, has a good skill set. The skill set doesn't necessarily match what you really need now that you have new clarity. This is a very hard road, right? Because you need this expertise, but you have somebody good, right?
Mhm.
So I find that founders often vacillate between, okay, we can just train them and give them the skills, right? That's one side. It's more of the heart led founder, and then the other one is more cutthroat. Like, well, look, we need to find somebody and find somebody quick. If they can't do it, let's get somebody in. I like to be somewhere in the middle, actually.
Yeah.
Like there's no need to keep somebody in a position that they can't perform.
Yeah.
That's not fair to them. It's not fair to the company. Um, but also, if they're showing signs that they can pick up this skill set, give them the opportunity to. So in the event where you have to have the conversation, this kind of comes full circle in the beginning, how we talked about how I really got to experience you. Um, when it's time to say, hey, we brought you on and the capacity in which we're using you for, we weren't really clear on. And now that we are, this is not necessarily a good fit. What are some tips? I mean, the book Radical Candor gives a lot of ways to have those type of hard conversations, but what are some pointers you can tell that founder who's torn because they may have an attachment, to the
Yeah.
person that they hired, even though they aren't necessarily the right person for the team's need at that point?
Yeah. So I want to like hit my hand on the desk right now, but it'll shake the whole screen. But be real with people. Like
Mm,
don't sugarcoat it. Don't BS them. Be kind. Yes. Be compassionate. Set goals with them, but take accountability for your misdirection. That yes, what I hired you for, you were perfect for that. But I found out I need something different. And here's
mm,
where you're incredible. And here's where I'm having a hard time. And I might need a different skill set. And then if you think that person might be able to get there,
wow.
set goals with them, set timelines, set check in.
Mm,
Is it hard? Yes. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But whoever said business was going to be comfortable all the time? That's not the point
yeah,
of this.
yeah,
And that's where to me, the strength of a leader of building that trust and holding that discomfort so that your team member doesn't have to per se in that same way is really important. And there's ways to come to harmonious exits of this isn't going to work, but I'd really like to help you in your next step. So here's 4 weeks of severance or, whatever it might be. If you can get ahead of it before it's draining you, then
yeah.
you can give them time. Or I'll keep you on until said date. I'd love to be a reference for you. I can connect you to this person or this
That's
organization.
good.
But be real with people. Keep it real with people because the more that you try to beat around the bush, it almost, and this is an extreme and also a trendy word, but it becomes a form of gaslighting where you're like,
Yes.
something's not right. I feel it's not right. I feel I'm not safe here, but you're not telling me. So what's wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I've had the best success in my career as a leader being honest with people. And I think Ashley, I think it gets a bad perception because a lot of people think that honesty is just the cold, hard truth. And it's like you can be honest, firm, and caring
Yeah.
and sensitive,
Yeah. You don't have
right?
to be mean
And not a
about it.
jerk.
Like, nobody said you have to be mean.
Yes, right. And I think that a lot of times people need language.
Sure.
One way is to say, hey, look, you're not performing as I expected, and we're going to have to bring somebody else in. That's
Yeah.
honest. It is honest, but whew, is that rough? Oh man, I don't know if the person felt that they were valued or cared for. And in fact, maybe they think that it's all their fault. Whereas if it's something like you said, hey, look, what we hired you for, you were perfect for. Our needs shifted. And there are
Yeah.
some things that were indicators of that I didn't see. but I see those now and I understand how this may impact you.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I want to see, is there anything that in this transitionary time I can do to be of assistance? Have in your time working here, have you seen something that you're like, ooh, I would like to do that too? Because maybe there's another area in the business they can benefit, but
Yeah.
just open it up and have the conversation. And one of my longest standing team members to this day is a result of that, is them expressing to me that their time with me has come up, and me opening the door to sit down at the table of truth and have
Yeah.
a conversation. Let them say, what they really want to do. And what it ended up being is I found another position in the company, and they've been a rock star for years. But to
That's
your
amazing.
point, Ashley, did it take extra effort? Yes. Was it easy? No. But was it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've got one last question, but it's twofold, Ashley.
Yeah.
And it's from your experience. Let's say I hired you to come in and assess my team. Okay. And you've only got a limited time, right? You've got maybe an hour to look at their team dynamics and just kind of observe them. A short amount of time. I don't want to give a specific amount, but you've got a day, let's say, right, to bring you in. The twofold of this question is, what are some of the things that you're looking at that would signal this is a strong team? And
Mhm.
what are the things that you would look at that would signal uh, there's danger here? There's team building exercises that need to be implemented. So, a founder who's listening to this, a business owner who's listening to this, they may be seeing those things and not being able to label them as, okay, I have a strong team. Okay, there's some work to be done. And it could just be a couple. You don't have to go down the list, but what are some of those strengths that you look for to identify, okay, this team is really good, and on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So off the top of my head, if I was going to think about the things that really stick out as a team that is strong and that is
Mm-hmm.
moving in the right direction, putting technical skills aside.
Yep.
Um, oh gosh. So number one, I think is self-awareness.
Mm,
Are the individuals on the team self-aware? Because that opens up a whole new world. If somebody is not self-aware, they're going to be crashing into walls and knocking down everything. The safety,
wow.
you can have the smartest person, but if they lack self-awareness, the structure of that team is always going to be compromised.
Mm,
On top of that, then layered is accountability. And I think that kind of partners with self-awareness is, are they accountable for their function? Are they constantly passing the buck? Are they making excuses? Is, every time somebody calls them out, they're pointing the finger of, well, if this and this would have happened, when ultimately it's like, no, but that comes back to you, because even if X, Y, and Z have happened because of, said other team member, how did you handle that? How did you, own that and shift that? So that accountability and ownership is huge. Communication, of course,
mm,
we think that's the core of everything right now. And I think it's
mm,
something humans, both in the workplace and out of the workplace, are really having to open up our minds in new ways, because the world is changing and how we communicate. Everything from social media, all of a sudden everybody's voice has this loud platform, and
yeah.
there's so many rights, and so
Yep.
many rights and so many wrongs. And so how are we communicating? In all directions.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other one is going to be, again, I keep using this word safety, but what's the psychological safety on the team? Are people attacked for their
Mm,
thoughts? Are they encouraged to go deeper? Are they validated for their thoughts? And I think those four elements are kind of the very high level that I would first observe, and see how those things were interacting.
yeah. Yeah. And we could easily say the opposite of those is the indicator of a team that needs improvement, right? But what
Absolutely.
are, so I guess I would change that question to, what are some of the reasons that people have come to you, or that you've experienced in the past, that they've identified as, hey, I need some help? Is it
Sure.
performance based, or does it tend to be other aspects?
Oh, I mean, it's all over the
Yep.
spectrum, right? So
Yep.
and again, depending on the role, the
Yep.
organization, the
Yep.
team size, there's so much that can be at play there. But um, I'm trying to think if I've got a good example because there's so
Hmm.
many stories running through
Right.
my head
Yep.
now. But I think where you really start to run into issues is one, there's the store or the question that's constantly asked is there such thing as a what is it, a smart asshole or a brilliant asshole,
Hmm.
is my language, but
Hmm.
and that's the question, where should we hire someone if we know they've got rough edges? Is the brilliance worth it? And you see
Wow.
that on teams a lot, where it's like, wow, we've got these really smart people, but they don't know how to play nice.
Yeah.
um, and I think, from my experience and what I've seen and what I've coached, the answer is no. If they're that brilliant, they're going to figure out how to be self-aware. They're going to figure out
Yeah.
how to develop in those areas, because
Yeah.
we are not a siloed world. You have to work well with others. And when we become siloed, innovation stops,
Mm.
creativity stops. We bottlenecks in the organization, and so much of your resources end up, or so many of your resources as resources end up going into, how do I fix the problem? How do I, you're moving all the pieces around inside instead of growing outside. And that's really where, I think some of the biggest downfalls are.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Ashley, this has been an amazing time. By the way, just so all my listeners know, I have about five more questions. I do. I mean, the more you talk, the more it just keeps coming like, oh, what about this? What about this? But I'm mindful. And I think that you've given us so much to think about. On this podcast, we focus so much on defining the process, mapping the process, coupling technology to scale the output, but there's people in those processes, right? There's people, and we can't ever have the approach of process over people
Right.
where we will sacrifice somebody for the sake. And when you were talking the last point that you made, I think what I heard was culture.
Mhm.
Like, be intentional with the culture that you want to create. And once you've created that, be extremely careful who you bring in to that
Yeah.
culture. Who cares how great they are on paper? If they're going to mess up the team dynamics, you have to value that more.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
have to. So for my listeners who have been listening, like, oh my goodness, who is this woman? I need to talk to her yesterday. I feel like she's the answer to an issue that I didn't realize I was having. I just knew something was painful. Where can people go and connect with you or find out more about what you do?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Ashley Lundquist. Reach out, add a connection, send me a note there. Or if you go to my website is thrivetalent.io, and you can connect with me there, send an email, and I'll follow up.
Great, great. We'll have both of those links at the in the show notes for today's episode. Ashley, this has been absolutely amazing. Again, I get to cheat. I get to cheat because I got to reconnect with you, and I got to show my audience somebody that I know personally. This was not like a cold prospecting email. Like, I know Ashley personally. I can vouch for everything that she said. So this has been amazing to give the gift of you to my audience. So thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Well, it was my pleasure. So good to see you. You are amazing.
Thank you.
And thanks for
Thank you.
putting this all together, Chris.
Yes, yes. So listeners, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your listenership. That I keep saying that word, Ashley. I don't know if it's a real word, and I don't care. It
Wait
sounds
it.
good,
Wait
right?
it. Nice,
It
right?
sounds good. Ashley, thank you for your expertise and your willingness to come on. Again, listeners, thank you for your listenership. And everybody, automate responsibly, my friends.